Chapter 14. We were country children, and city life wasn't easy for us. For me and my 7-year-old sister, it meant learning a new dialect, finding new friends, and standing our ground among strange children. The city was dirty and loud, and I didn't like it at all. Back in the village, we had sometimes dreamed of living in the city, with big shops, well-built stone houses, and lots of cars. But now I had a long way to go before I could see a field. The park was pretty enough, but we weren't allowed to play there because the grown-ups used it as a place for practicing their Tai Chi and taking a rest, and their concentration was not to be disturbed. It's true that there had been rubbish lying around in our village too, but here in the city, every corner of the house smelled different. In Zhengzhou, we were able to live with a Christian lady, but she had only a very small apartment and was very poor. She had set up a little business selling cloth, but it didn't provide enough for even one person to live on. Now we were there too, placing another burden on her household. There was nothing for it but to go out on the streets and see if we could make some money. So we began to collect rubbish, bottles, metal, and paper. We could get cash for this at the rubbish collection center, which we could use for much needed food and school equipment. The dirty things we had to pick up made me feel really queasy. From that time on, I've had a habit of always looking at the ground in case I find coins that people have carelessly dropped. I found the dirt, the cramped flat, and the smell of the city unbearable. In addition, we had to put up with the scorn the other pupils showed us as village children and for our particular dialect. And we had to conceal our Christian faith as well. All in all, it became too heavy a burden for me. I got angry with God, and I felt very embittered. God, you have blessed my grandmother, but you've taken her away. You have blessed my father, but he is not here. You have blessed my mother, but you've also let her go to prison. You were going to bless me too, but I can't see any evidence of it. You must be a tiny, weak god. The gods of the Chinese people seem much bigger and more powerful. There are temples to these gods everywhere, but where are you? I had, of course, been through a lot with God, but in the city he seemed to me to have become small and ineffective. My hatred of this puny little god was so great that I decided to never become a preacher. I understand now how it's possible for people living through terrible circumstances to be unable to believe in God's love. For me, the realization came later when I was 17 that even if I could hate God, he still loved me. He didn't abandon me, even when at 13 I wanted to stop following him. A new temptation lay in wait for me in the city: materialism. Some of the boys in my class had cassette players, CD players, and computers, all of which were totally new to me, and which at first I didn't understand. Steadily the desire grew in me to possess this technology too, but it was as far away from me as the source of the Yangtze was from its delta on the Yellow Sea. It was just one more reason for being dissatisfied with God. So that no one could link us with our father, I was even given a new name. I was now called Yang Yun. The name came from my mother, who was from a family of Yangs. It was hard for me to get used to this. When the teacher called out Yang Yun, I either didn't react at all or responded so late that it must have been obvious that it wasn't my real name. After 3 months in 1997, my mother was released from jail. We moved again, this time to a totally new part of town. We broke off all connection with friends and also with our church community. My mother had suffered a great deal and couldn't bear the thought of going back to prison. She was desperate to spare us all from that. In spite of our self-imposed isolation, news reached us that my father had been miraculously set free from jail. He was now lying low with some Christians in Wuhan. We were able to visit him there, although it was very risky for all concerned. My father's reports were terrifying and inconceivable in their horror. We realized that one more spell in prison would inevitably mean death for him. Again we moved house. It was becoming the norm for us to flee from one town to another. In the province of Shandong lived a family with whom we had been connected for 3 generations. We were able to go to ground with them. I'm very grateful to that family for giving us security again. With their help, we even got an apartment, and again we changed our names. I was now called Wang Min Yun. Once more there was a new school system, a new dialect, and new contacts. In spite of my dislike of the puny God, I still held firmly on to him. I read the Bible and prayed, though it was more intellectual than heartfelt. But remarkably, despite this, I managed to bring home some other young people to faith in Jesus, and even worked with a Christian children's group.